Baik, Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Terima kasih kerana menonton diskusi santai Palestin. InsyaAllah kami akan kedua secara langsung setiap Sabtu malam pertama dan ketiga pada jam 10 malam. Jangan lupa untuk tekan tombol subscribe kerana ia sangat penting. Penubuhan negara Israel sejak tahun 1948 telah dibuat di atas dasar kekejaman dan pengurusan etnik secara terancam. Lebih 750,000 rakyat Palestin telah diusir dari kediaman mereka pada tahun ini. Logik kolonis ini, dasar penjajahan, pemusnahan dan pengusiran telah terus-menerus dilakukan sehinggalah ke saat ini. Pada hari ini, hampir 1/3 atau 5 juta dari penduduk Palestin hidup di bawah sistem pemerintahan tentera yang sangat kejam di tebing barat, Yerusalem Timur dan juga semenanjung Gaza. Rejim Israel telah merampas tanah penduduk Palestin. Mereka membina pemerintahan haram Yahudi sahaja dan mengusir dan mengumpulkan rakyat Palestin ke ghetto ataupun pemerintahan setinggan yang sangat daif. Mereka dikepung oleh tembok tinggi, menara pengawasan tentera dan lebih 500 sekatan jalan tentera yang sangat menyusahkan kehidupan seharian mereka. 12% rakyat Palestin lagi ataupun hampir 2 juta orang hidup di dalam negara Israel sendiri sebagai warga negara kelas ketiga. Mereka hidup di negara Israel dengan pelbagai undang-undang diskriminasi yang menjurus kepada sistem pemerintahan apartheid seperti yang telah ditaklifkan oleh PBB. Akhir sekali, lebih separuh daripada rakyat Palestin ataupun 6 juta orang masih terus hidup sebagai pelarian di beberapa negara jiran dan mereka ini tidak dibenarkan pulang ke kampung halaman mereka sehinggalah pada saat ini. Pada tahun 2014, rejim Israel telah menjalankan satu pengumuman yang paling dahsyat dan kejam ke atas semenanjung Gaza. Lebih 2,000 orang rakyat Palestin berkorban, yang mana satu perempat daripada anak adalah anak kecil yang tidak berdosa. Rejim Israel hanya boleh menjalankan pemerintahan zalim ini kerana mereka mendapat sokongan dari beberapa negara yang sangat besar di seluruh. Oleh kerana mereka ini tidak mahu ketidakadilan ini. Kami melukas anda semua dan seluruh rakyat dunia bersatu padu bersama rakyat Palestin memperjuangkan hak asasi.
Azam, ada ekor lagi tadi kan?
Mereka, iaitu kebebasan, keadilan dan kesamaratan hak. Pada tahun 2005, lebih 170 NGO dan pertubuhan masyarakat sivil Palestin telah bersetuju untuk menyeru masyarakat dunia untuk memboikot, melupus, menyekat kepentingan Israel. Maka lahirlah satu pergerakan akar umbi global BDS yang berpusat di Palestin. Seruan strategik bersama secara aman ini adalah untuk memulaukan dan memberi tekanan kepada rejim Israel seperti yang telah berjaya dilakukan di negara Afrika Selatan. Pergerakan BDS menyeru kempen boikot Israel secara berterusan sehinggalah mereka mematuhi kesemua undang-undang antarabangsa. Seperti berikut. Yang pertama, mereka mesti menghentikan penjajahan haram mereka di atas semua tanah yang telah dirampas pada tahun 1967. Yang kedua, mereka mesti menghentikan sistem pemerintahan.
Okey, saya stop sharing sebab ada echo. Azam kata, baiklah. Baik, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum, ni hao, waalaikum, salam sejahtera bersama saya di diskusi santai Palestin. Kali ini kali yang ke-7. Kita ada topik kita bincangkan adalah apartheid di Afrika Selatan. Adakah ia sama dengan apartheid di Palestin? Adakah betul itu apartheid? Apakah perbezaan dan apakah persamaan antara apartheid di Afrika Selatan dan juga di Palestin? Untuk tujuan itu, kami akan bawakan seorang speaker tidak asing lagi daripada Palestin sendiri, daripada Bandar Hebron. Tapi beliau sekarang sudah belajar, tengah buat dia punya PhD di Universiti Malaya. Tapi sebelum kita pergi kepada topik utama kita, seperti biasa kita akan dengarkan berita terkini mengenai Palestin yang akan disampaikan tidak lain daripada bukan oleh Brother Azam kita. Dipersilakan, Encik Azam.
Okey, Assalamualaikum. Terima kasih, Boon. Saya dah sharing, boleh paparkan skrin kita?
Okey.
Okey, Assalamualaikum. Seperti biasa, kita kongsikan berita-berita terkini berhubungan dengan Palestin. Jadi, kita mulakan yang pertama. Baru-baru ni kita digemparkan dengan berita tentang kegiatan ejen asing yang telah menculik rakyat Palestin. Namun alhamdulillah atas tindakan pantas dan berkesan daripada pihak berkuasa telah menumpaskan kegiatan mereka ni. Jadi kejadian berlaku di pusat membeli belah di Kuala Lumpur. Saya rasa yang penting kita perlu ingatkan kawan-kawan dan saudara mara kita, apabila ditawarkan dengan wang ringgit ni, ada yang sanggup menjadi tali barut ejen asing ni dan menganiaya orang Muslim atau rakyat Palestin. Harap-harap dapatlah kita peringatkan sama-sama kita. Seterusnya demam pilihan raya di Malaysia sebenarnya sama juga rupanya di Israel. Mereka baru saja tamat pilihan raya di Israel sana, dan 1 November tak silap saya, dan buat masa ni parti Likud yang diketuai dan sekutunya yang diketuai oleh bekas PM Benjamin Netanyahu nampaknya dapat menguasai Knesset, dan juga kita dapat berita Perdana Menteri sebelum ni Yair Lapid pun telah angkat bendera putih, ngaku kalah. Jadi akan datang mungkin kita jumpa lagi lah Netanyahu yang dikenali sebagai Bibi ni. Sebelum ni pun kita dah tahu golongan pro Netanyahu ni memang geng-geng yang ekstremis. Dan saya rasa yang terkini di Gaza, baru semalam mereka kena bom lagi. Saya rasa boleh lihat, nanti kita akan share di Facebook kita bagaimana Gaza dibom. Selalunya mereka ni time-time election nak sokongan rakyat, dia akan momokkanlah dengan musuh-musuh kononnya yang selalu dikenal pasti oleh mereka, rakyat Palestin lah. Sedangkan kita nak memberi peringatan kepada pendengar kita bahawa ini bukan perang macam biasa. Itu yang selalu kita panggil asymmetric warfare. Kalau simetri itu maksudnya dua pihak yang lebih kurang kuasa ketenteraannya, tapi Gaza ni bukannya ada tentera, bukannya ada kereta kebal, bukannya ada jet pejuang ataupun lapangan terbang kan. Jadi memang sebelah pihak sahajalah daripada Israel sana yang terus-menerus menyerang rakyat di Palestin yang tidak berdosa. Baik Boon, saya rasa itu sahaja ringkasan berita kita untuk hari ini, malam ni.
Okey, terima kasih Encik Azam. Itu ada 3 berita yang agak penting. Yang pertama yang kecoh tu adalah Mossad di Malaysia. Ada ejen Mossad. Yang sedikit menyedihkan, ejen Mossad tu adalah orang Melayu Islam sendiri Jadi saya rasa salah satu yang kita perlukan mungkin program mungkin NGO Palestin, terutamanya kita sendiri Azam, perlu memainkan lebih peranan untuk mendidik mereka kenapa kita perlu bersama dengan rakyat Palestin, dengan apa yang telah terjadi di sana, dan jangan cakap selagi dia bagi duit saja kita tak ada jati diri dan kita mengambil duit untuk menjadi ejen si Zionis ni. Dan keduanya adalah election. Kita pun ada election. Pagi tadi kita ada pencalonan semua calon-calon nak menjadi YB di Malaysia, dan juga di US juga ada midterm yang akan berlangsung hari Selasa ni. Baiklah, itu election. Dan last sekali tadi apa Zam? Okey, tadi pasal Gaza dibom. Saya sebenarnya ini satu benda kita akan bincangkan lagi sebab macam Azam kata ini bukanlah satu peperangan atau bukan satu war. Ada terminologi tu kena betul. Ada satu pihak yang ada F-16 yang ada segala only fourth largest military in the world dengan orang yang tak ada apa-apa. Yang Gaza ni pun satu city yang dikepung. Dia macam kalau tu berjibung dalam kolam ikan dekat pasar. Jadi macam benda tu tak pening lah kita nak fikirkan benda tu memang. Tapi kita harap saudara kita di Palestin dapat bersabar dan insyaAllah kita kena terus bagikan semangat dan kita berjuang bukan kerana kita nak menang, because itu satu benda yang saya rasa yang sepatutnya kita
Boon, mungkin satu je saya nak tambah sebelum kita beralih seterusnya. Perumpamaan kita sekarang ni election, jadi semua rakyat ada hak pergi mengundi. Tapi saya nak ingatkan pendengar kita, tidak sebegitulah dekat Israel yang konon-kononnya demokratik tu kan. Ada lebih kurang 12 juta penduduk di situ, daripada Sungai Jordan hinggalah ke Mediterranean Sea. Tapi etnik Palestin langsung tidak dibenarkan mengundi. Inilah yang kita namakan sistem apartheid yang menindas dan berat sebelah. Okey Boon.
Terima kasih Encik Azam kerana mengeluarkan the A word. Untuk itu kita akan panggilkan Brother Muslim sebagai salah seorang rakyat Palestin yang hidup di dalam sistem apartheid. Dipersilakan Brother. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me on board. Assalamualaikum.
Okey, alhamdulillah. Waalaikumsalam. Okey, untuk makluman semua, Brother Muslim ni dia boleh bercakap Melayu. Apa khabar? Sudah okey. Dia boleh cakap Melayu, mungkin kita boleh borak. Tapi Brother Muslim tak tahu, saya boleh cakap Arab sikit lah.
Okey, kalau macam tu kita teruskan dalam bahasa Arab.
Jaga. Saya boleh tahu Assalamualaikum anak anta sahaja.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim juga.
Okay, untuk for the benefit of the audience, our discussion will be santai saja. Tapi of course Brother Muslim dengan kita lebih senang dalam bahasa Inggeris. But he understand bahasa Malaysia. And in fact, he can speak quite well in bahasa Malaysia. Okay, Brother Muslim, probably the first question will be people want to know a little bit of you. You know, where you're coming from, how old are you? Are you still single? Because the Palestinian people from Malaysia point of view, they're quite handsome and beautiful.
Thank you. No, I am married. My name is Muslim Imran. My name is Muslim Imran. I was born in Palestine. I am currently doing my PhD in Strategic and International Studies in University of Malaya. I did my earlier education in the International Islamic University, or as commonly called UIA, in engineering and later in political science. So I have a briefly diverse academic background. Have been in Malaysia for a while, and I'm involved in the civil society activities, especially of PCOM and recently of Asia Middle East Center.
Okay, just for the sake of, how old are you now? And when did you come to Malaysia?
26 something. I arrived in 2003, so that was like 19 years ago. Yeah, October 23. Exactly 19 years ago.
Have you gone back to Palestine?
I have visited Gaza once. I am from the West Bank though. I've not been able to go back to the West Bank since I've come here. Inshallah, hopefully someday soon things will change to the better and I'll be able to go back to the West Bank.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. One of the things that people don't quite understand is that it's not easy for you to go out and go back there. I mean, some people say if you've been too long, so they'll put you in the jail before you can go back to your city. Is that true? That's what Prof. Nazari told me.
Of course, the travel is a big deal for Palestinians, whether they are from the West Bank, Gaza, or even Palestinian citizens of Israel. For instance, Palestinians from Gaza always face restrictions. They are not allowed to go all the time. They have to apply for permits to travel, and there are quotas for how many people can travel from the Rafah crossing, in or out. But for the Palestinians in the West Bank, it's a bit more complicated, I would say, because we are living under direct military rule in the West Bank. So when we cross the border, the Alimbi bridge on the River Jordan, we have to pass through Israeli checkpoints. We have to pass through Palestinian immigration control point, and then Israeli immigration control point, and then the Jordanian control point. Now, every one of these authorities has its own restrictions, blacklists, etc. But the worst is, of course, the Israeli, which sometimes returns people arbitrarily, sometimes detains people, sometimes instructs people to go for an interview with the intelligence. And in many cases, there are tens of thousands of Palestinians on the Israeli travel ban lists. So life or travel is not as easy as you might think. My dad, for instance, was detained by Israel for a few years under what they call the administrative detention. That's an archaic law that the Israelis inherited from colonial British rule, somehow similar to ISA that you used to have here once. The Israeli authorities can detain people without charges, and these people are not even entitled to know what they are jailed for. So my dad has gone through this for several years, and eventually he was banned from travel, and he continues to have such a travel ban, even though he's 65 or more, and yeah, it's difficult to travel. So I think for me, as many other Palestinians, I find it very difficult to go back to the West Bank. But inshallah, things will change. Just like the apartheid in South Africa collapsed after decades, just like the American occupation of Afghanistan, for instance, ended a year ago. I think Israeli occupation will end as well.
All right, thank you. Azam, you want to join in? I think I can play Mediasat. Just now, we want to know basically what's the difference between, because the moment that we mention apartheid, people always liken it to what happened in South Africa, because that's probably the original, the apartheid words coming from. It's just that we want to compare what happened, because if people aware, in February this year, there's Amnesty International have came out with a report with 4 years of study. They have come up quite almost 280 pages. I can share with you if you want to see the report that they label Israel as an apartheid state. So there is also that one also go by international definition. But I'll try and play you. Before that, you got, I think 2021 in July, there's Human Rights Watch also came out with the report of Israel as an apartheid state, and before that there is two Yedish Din and BT Salam who also came out. Israel Human Rights NGO have labeled Israel their own countries an apartheid state. I'll play you just a 3 minutes. It captures a little bit on the Amnesty International and the response from the Israeli side.
Yeah.
So from there, just a 3 minutes. Wait, so you can comment.
Scathing new report. Amnesty International accuses Israel of committing the crime of apartheid against Palestinians in the occupied territories and is.
Can you hear the audio just now?
Audio only. Okay, now we can see it.
Oppression and domination as perpetrated in South Africa between 1948 and 1994. Instead, this report analyzes the systematic discrimination currently perpetrated by Israel against Palestinians and determines whether it meets the international definition of apartheid. See, what people don't seem to get is that Israel doesn't have to be a replica of South Africa. Apartheid isn't defined by what happened in South Africa, it's defined by international law. For example, in the 1973 International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid, quote, apartheid is defined, quote, inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group of persons over any other racial group of persons and systematically oppressing them. That's what the world's leading human rights groups are now saying is happening on the ground in Israel and the occupied territories. And they say it meets the definition of the crime of apartheid under international law. The second point about South Africa is that, I'm sorry to say, a lot of leading South African anti-apartheid activists, like the late Desmond Tutu, who recently passed away, thought there were similarities between apartheid in South Africa and apartheid in Israel. Have a listen.
You said that you saw in Israel something that was quite akin to the situation in South Africa before freedom came to the black people of South Africa.
Well, in many instances worse. It's actually quite distressing. For one thing, we didn't have a war.
Okay, tuan-tuan, itulah basically the late Desmond Tutu, Archbishop of di South Africa, yang part of the ANC. Not really part of ANC, tapi basically the conclusion that bukan setakat Palestine, Israel is an apartheid state. In fact, benda tu is worse. Because in South Africa, there is no military occupation. But in Hebron, in Palestine, there is a military occupation. Probably Muslim, you just want to add, so your life in how people want to know. In Malaysia, kita tak pernah ada hidup di bawah pemerintahan tentera. What is it like to live in under?
Okay, of course, the video that you have just broadcast shows that the system that Palestinians live in is apartheid. Now, international organizations started to recognize it. Amnesty International is one of the most recent. In February this year, Human Rights Watch in April last year, and interestingly, Israel's leading human rights group, B'Tselem, a few years ago, published a similar report. I'll quote what B'Tselem says in conclusion of its report. It says, "This is apartheid. The territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea is governed by a single regime that works to maintain Jewish supremacy." So apartheid is, I think, an Afrikaans word that comes from the language of the colonial settlers of South Africa, which means simply separation, apartheid, or apartheid. It's a system of separation. They want to continue to live in Palestine, and they want to get rid of us. If they are unable to get rid of us, the second option, plan B, is to dominate us and to maintain a system of apartheid. So living under apartheid means you have two roads. For instance, just a very simple example that we see in Hebron, for instance, in my hometown. Two roads, one for the Jewish settlers, one for the Palestinians, Muslim or Christian. You have two systems, judicial systems, two legal systems. One for the Israeli occupiers, the Israeli citizens of Israel, or the Israeli settlers, illegal settlers who live in the West Bank, the occupied land in the West Bank. One system for them, civilian law, and one military rule, one military legal system for the Palestinians. So if a Palestinian commits an offense according to Israel's military law, he is sentenced and he's charged and sentenced in a military court run by soldiers, and most of the time it's kangaroo courts where these Palestinians end up in Israeli prisons anyway. While Israeli settlers who carry guns, who live illegally in the West Bank, do not face similar judicial system. They have a very separate system, which is a civilian judicial law that they are subject to inside Israel, and even when they are in the West Bank. There are so many examples. The Palestinians have been saying it all along. We have been saying that we live under apartheid, we live under colonial persecution, like what Human Rights Watch said, but nobody was paying attention, especially in the West. Of course, in the OIC member states, in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, there are many supporters who have been echoing our plight and our calls. But in the West, in Europe, in North America, they have been ignoring our calls. Now, fortunately, these international organizations are starting to speak up, and they do not paint it the same way we would paint it, but at least they are voicing out our concerns. They are saying what Israel is doing is apartheid. What is helping them, what is helping us as well in portraying the true image of Israel as an apartheid entity, is the crazy fanatic right-wing militias that are forming the Israeli government now. Since the year 2000, Israel has been run by right-wing governments. Since Ariel Sharon and Ehud Olmert onwards, Israel has been run by right-wing governments. Today, as we speak, Israel will be administered by an extremely fascist right-wing government. So people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who used to be considered militant extremists, even in Israel itself, even amongst the Israeli establishment, these people now are going to become ministers, senior ministers, and mark my words, they will be senior ministers in Benjamin Netanyahu's new government. So because these people have no shame, they don't care much about the international community, they don't care much about human rights or human rights groups. They are saying it very publicly. We don't mind, we're an apartheid, so what? One of the most common Israeli terminologies in Israeli political discourse is transfer. If you read Israeli newspapers, they always talk about transfer. What they mean is transferring the Palestinian population of Israel, the Palestinian citizens of Israel, outside of Israel. So we have reached a level where this kind of ideology and these kinds of extremist leaders are actually the mainstream in Israel. So the Israeli society has really shifted towards the fascist right very quickly. Of course, Israel was established as an apartheid. Ethnic cleansing was well documented by Israeli historians in the 1990s. People like Professor Ilan Pape and others like Simha Flapan and others have been speaking about the fact that Israel was built upon an extremist, ethnic cleansing process. But currently, this is becoming very public, and they are not shy about it anymore. That's why I think the world has to really wake up and put an end to this system of apartheid. How long more are we going to see such fascist policies in practice in the 21st century?
Yeah, thanks, Muslim. Actually, the whole apartheid, I think, system was even masa during Africa, when Israel also voted that South Africa is practicing apartheid. They said you also the same because you took the land from the Arabs. They have been living there for thousands of years. In fact, you are the same like us. That was in 1974. That's the architect of South Africa apartheid system. We lost Muslim. So that's the thing. Cuma yang Muslim ada bagi satu point tadi dalam that discussion. Muslim, sekejap ya, I put you here. We lost you. Muslim bercakap tadi, in fact, dalam Israel sini ada about 2 million Arab Palestine that live as Israel citizens. In fact, they are growing more than faster than the Israel. They also try to transfer them out from the Israel. This one they can have a vote even to vote in Israel per se.
Yeah, they are called and labeled in Israeli terminology as the demographic problem or the demographic bomb. So the Palestinian inhabitants of Israel, the Palestinians who did not leave Palestine in 1948 and have, of course, existed in Palestine for hundreds or probably thousands of years, are considered a demographic problem for Israel. Even though in terms of numbers, they are less than 20% of the population of Israel. These people refused to leave Palestine in 1948 in spite of the massacres and the ethnic cleansing. The numbers has grown, and they're now about 1.5, 1.7 million Palestinian citizens of Israel. These people are being denied basic identity rights now. In 2018, Israel's parliament, the Knesset, passed an act called the Nation State Act. It simply subsides the Arabic language. It downgrades the Palestinian citizens of Israel into second-class citizens. It makes it illegal for Palestinian citizens of Israel to even carry the flags of Palestine and to use the Arabic language in official, institutions, things like that. They are not only persecuting the Palestinian people of the West Bank or Gaza, whom they illegally occupy according to international laws, but they are also persecuting the Palestinian citizens of Israel, who are supposed to be living in a democracy. Of course, Israel has always perpetuated the lie that it's the only democracy in the Middle East. When in reality, it's an ethnocracy. It's a system that was built for the Jewish people only. And it failed in exterminating millions of Palestinians. So it ended up putting a facade of democracy, some image of democracy, while inside, in reality, it persecutes Arabs, Palestinian citizens of Israel. It sidelines them from everything. It uses and abuses other minorities, like the Druze and other minorities in Israel. So Israel's system of apartheid has existed very early on. It's just that the more we resist it, the more the world notices it. If we keep silent, the world will think things are okay, everything is normal. But when you see incidents of resistance in the West Bank, like the past few weeks, or Palestinians in Gaza put up a strong front of resistance, like 2021 war, the world notices that, oh yeah, Israel is apartheid and it's persecuting the Palestinians. We have to do something. We have to end it. Probably not because they are very concerned about our human rights, but because they are concerned about Israel's image as a democracy. Of course, Israel prefers to always be called a democracy. So the Americans are pressuring it. The Europeans are pressuring it to acknowledge our rights, but not the kind of pressure that we expect.
Okay, Muslim. I think I've also watched one of your videos. You said even in Israel itself, they are discriminating against. I think there are three types of Israelis: the Ashkenazi Jews. I think especially the one from the Moroccan, from the African. Yeah. They're also being discriminated.
Israel has never had an Arab Eastern Jew being its prime minister, as a prime minister. It has always been the Ashkenazi Western Jews. Of course, the African Jews, there are some Jewish tribes that come from Ethiopia, are also being sidelined, being sometimes discriminated against within the Israeli society. But at the end of the day, they accepted to come and migrate as illegal settlers to Palestine. And they're facing dual problems from the Palestinians who don't want them to come and steal their land, and problems from the Israeli system, which is very fascist. It was built by white Europeans for white European Jews. But in order to grow a population, they brought in Arab Jews, they brought in Eastern Jews, they brought in some African Jews. And then these people ended up demanding their rights. Now the Ashkenazi Jews, the Israeli whites, have a real problem. They want population, they want soldiers, they want to run and manage an economy, but they don't want African Jews in charge. They don't want Arab Jews in charge. They want to stay in power. So this system of apartheid is multi-layered, actually. There is a system imposed on the Palestinians, and there is another within the Israeli society itself.
Yeah, it's very complex, and they are the Azam, the most racist nation in the world. So the thing is that we don't quite understand, because they came from the Western, most of them Ashkenazi Jews, which has been oppressed by the Western people, by the European, and they did the same to other people. So this is really there's no word for that.
The Zionist ideology is actually a product of the extremist ideologies of the late 19th century. Zionism, even the word Zionism, was coined in the late 19th century. It was coined by an Austrian Jew. The first conference was organized in Switzerland in 1897 for the World Zionist Organization. Around that time, fascism and Nazism were on the rise in Europe. So the German society, the Italian society, even the British society were facing a rising tide of nationalism and ultra-nationalism. Eventually, after the First World War, it was manifested in fascism and Nazism, extremist right-wing ideologies. Zionism emerged and appeared in the same period. That's why it has a lot of reflections of those ideologies. Zionism is a really defunct ideology. It's something that belonged to a very ancient time, some 150 years ago. The world has abandoned it, especially in the West. Unfortunately, of course, now there are new fascists and new Nazis, but in general, the liberal West has abandoned fascism and has criminalized it, but not for Zionism, which is very ridiculous. I can't understand when I see an American liberal or a European liberal who suffered from Nazism, for instance, supporting Israeli fascism, which is Zionism. It makes no sense at all, but it's happening.
Yes. I just shared the screen. This is basically the Amnesty International report. There's 280 pages. Basically, what Brother Imran has described is basically there. They discriminate even the Arab Israeli in Israel, how they try to cut the child support system, the kindergarten, because they said we are giving more to the Arab Israeli child in Israel, so they get more. And basically the one that this is we can watch. You go to their website. In fact, the King Bibi, the Israel new prime minister, they said they just make a public statement that Israel is a state for Israel people only. It's in 2019. So basically, Amnesty International catch that and put that in their record. So like you said, now they don't shy away of showing their fascism, their discrimination, their apartheidness to the whole world. And I think I like about the Agnes Calmet, the I think Amnesty International Human Rights Secretary General. She said the things about apartheid in Palestine, it's not about the oppression, but it's about the systematic that they humiliate the people, for the past 70 years is something that she cannot take it in that sense, So to me that is beyond words. Beyond words. Alhamdulillah, I mean, people like Brother Muslim and the rest of Palestine, they are there to be humiliated. I'm so sorry, but they resist. Just so that's why we try to highlight to those, especially to those Malaysian, Azam kata, who work for Mossad and whatnot. So what they have to go through, they fight, not to win the war, but it's basically for.
Boon, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Brother Muslim, you mentioned about the start of Zionism in late 19th centuries and whatnot. So if it's like fairly a recent thing, this Zionism late 19th century, so is this related to their so-called religion at all? Because one of the news that CNN keep telling us, it is about the religious war. They can call it jihad war and things like that. So can you elaborate on that? You are silent. You are silent.
You see, brother, Western media cannot be trusted. Not on Palestine, not on Ukraine, not on any other issue. They make it, or they try to portray it as a religious war, but it's not. If it was a religious war, you will find Muslims all over the world slaughtering Jews and attacking synagogues. We don't do that. Muslims don't do that. Even Palestinians don't do that. We have no issues, no problem with people of the Jewish faith. They have lived in Palestine and in other parts of the Muslim world for centuries. In fact, the Ottoman Empire was so kind to them that when they were persecuted in Spain and Andalusia, they were invited and welcomed to the Islamic territories. They became ministers in countries like Morocco and Egypt, and they lived in peace in Yemen and elsewhere. But what's happening is a new nationalist ideology hijacking the Jewish faith, hijacking Judaism, using it, abusing it in order to perpetuate power, to perpetuate a new political system in Palestine. They stole the land of the Palestinians, and they have to find reasons to justify why they stole the land of the Palestinians. If they stole another people's land, trust me, they will think of some other justification. Now, in the case of Palestine, it happens that Palestine is the Holy Land. It's a place where Muslims, Christians, and Jews have religious sanctuaries, religious history. So the Jewish Zionists started to reinterpret their religious scriptures and texts. It's just like what ISIS is doing with Islamic scriptures and texts. They come to the Holy Quran, they take a verse out of its context, and they start a holy war against anybody who they don't like, be it Muslim or non-Muslim. Israel has done the same. Israel was a successful ISIS that started about 100 years ago. They hijacked the Jewish religion. And in fact, interestingly, Israel wasn't started by religious Jews. Israel was started by atheists and secular Jews. People like Ben Gurion and others, the founders of Israel, they were secular leftist Zionist leaders. The right wing came up in the image later. The first right-wing Israeli prime minister was Menachem Begin, who came to power in the late 1970s. So Israel was a lie that was started by people who did not really worship God the Jewish way. We're not religious Jews. It was a lie that was well designed, and it had to attract the masses, so they had to bring in some religious dimension to it. They got some Jewish people to come, but because of political reasons, eventually Israel emerged as a regional power, not because of religious reasons. So Palestinians have no problem with Jewish people who come visit and leave. We have a problem with Jewish people who come kill us and take over our land. If other Muslims come over to Palestine and kill us and take our land, we're going to fight them. Just like what happened with the Crusades. Before the Jewish Zionists come to Palestine, some 800 or 1,000 years ago, Christian Europeans, the Crusades, came over to Palestine and did exactly what the Zionist militias have done in Palestine. The Crusades started to attack Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Egypt. And eventually they established the Kingdom of Jerusalem for more than 190 years in Palestine. But it was uprooted at the end of the day because these people did not belong. They could have just come for pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Muslims would have had no problem with that. But when you come and uproot the original inhabitants and try to establish your own state in our land, you're going to face our resistance. So again, Palestinians are Muslims, Christians, and Jews. We have a very small Jewish minority in Palestine who speak Arabic, who identify as Palestinians. Some are living in Nablus now. We have a big Christian minority in Palestine of all denominations. Of course, the oldest Christian denominations in the world are Palestinians who have been worshipping God the Christian way since Prophet Jesus. Of course, we also have a Muslim majority. The Palestinians have coexisted. We had even some Baha'is some 100-something years ago coming to Palestine. We have Druze and other denominations. They have coexisted in peace. But when the Zionist leadership, who came from Europe, from Western Europe, decided to take over Palestine, they had to come up with a narrative. And the narrative was Jewish. It was based on Jewish culture, Jewish scriptures. Eventually, many Jewish groups believed the lie that was created by the secular Jews. And they started to defend it. They started to fight for it. They started to create religious wars now in Palestine. Now the ones who are fueling a religious war are not the Palestinians. It's not Hamas or Fatah that is fueling a religious war. It's those crazy Jewish settlers who are carrying machine guns all over the West Bank, attacking the Abraham Mosque in 1994. An Israeli right-wing settler from the same party that Ben Gvir and other Israeli ministers now are coming to power. Baruch Goldstein killed 29 Palestinian Muslims inside the Abraham Mosque while they were performing the Subuh prayer. These people are the ones who are fueling a religious war. It's people like Netanyahu who are fueling a religious war. It's people who continue to undermine Al-Aqsa's status and infiltrate into Al-Aqsa and desecrate other Muslim and Christian sanctuaries that are calling for religious war. We don't want a religious war. But if we have no choice but to defend Al-Aqsa and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Nativity Church and other holy places, then I think we have no choice. We have to defend our holy places as well. So sometimes they're dictating the terms of this war.
I like your line. You said basically Israel is the ISIS of the Muslims. Basically, they're just using the text of the religious scriptures just to justify whatever they are doing, you know. Because if you go into Google, into the internet, I think Israel is the most atheistic countries in the world. They have the most people who don't believe in God. The true probably Jews who is basically the Orthodox Jews. This Orthodox Jew also is on the side of Palestine. They say yes, probably the Palestinians probably bad Jews, but not through killing people, not through cheating, not through stealing of other people's land, you know. And they're basically the God-given people to do justice.
The funny part is that they all believe that God has promised them this land.
Yeah.
Even those who don't believe in God. Many Israelis do not believe in God. But you ask them, they say, God promised us this land. Which God? You don't believe in God.
You know, this morning I just watched the America and Israel. Why the America is so supporting Israel now? It is this Al Jazeera video. Basically, said America and Israel basically they are brothers. They are the same. Because Israel once upon a time, when they kick out all the native, when they're killing all the red Indians, they said because America is promised by God to them. Mm-hmm. That's why they have the rights to kill the red Indian and drive them away. So they use that justification. They said America was given to them by God.
It's the same model. I think it's the same model. It's just that unfortunately for the Israelis, they could not get rid of all of the Palestinians. The North American settlers, the white settlers, the Puritans who went to America managed to kill millions of Red Indians, unfortunately for our Red Indian brothers and sisters. But in the case of Palestine, there were too many of us probably, or we fought back and they couldn't get rid of all of us. So there are now at least 6 million Palestinians living in Palestine, and there are another 7 million Palestinians in diaspora. So it was a failed attempt to create a second United States for the Zionist movement, probably.
Yeah. Okay. I just watched this another video of the normalization between the Arab states, i.e. UAE. You know, basically what the Netanyahu said. What they try to justify why they don't normalize the relationship because when they normalize, Netanyahu suspend of annexation of the West Bank and the whole of in Gaza Strip, suspend of annexation. So basically, they said since that time the Trump was in the United States, basically they can do whatever they want to do at that point in time. So just suspend and they normalize they justify to the Arab world. That's why they're doing that. It's so crazy, man. They can simply what they're trying to do is annexations, like you accept like Russia annexation of Ukraine, and the rest of you don't catch on me anymore.
You see, it's hypocrisy, nothing else. Those who claim that they will normalize with Israel because they managed to persuade Israel not to annex the West Bank. How about the Golan Heights? How about the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights? Israel annexed that. Why did you normalize with them when they annexed another people's territory? And eventually, of course, Israel is annexing the West Bank, but in practical, slow, steady measures. They don't want the big fuss. In Israel, there are two schools of thought when it comes to the West Bank. There is this opinion that we should have a very big party and annex the West Bank, announce that we're annexing the West Bank and it's ours, expel all the Palestinians, big war, no problem. There is the other school of thought that says, why should we make noise when we can annex it silently? And this is the one that is happening now. The Israeli establishment is doing that in Masafir Yatta, near Hebron, in the north of the West Bank, in Jerusalem in particular. They are gradually canceling citizenship and residence cards of Palestinian citizens in Jerusalem. They are practically Judaizing the land, building new structures, new synagogues, undermining the structure of Al-Aqsa Mosque. If you build a second floor of your house in Jerusalem, you face the threat of demolishing your house. If you marry a Palestinian from outside of Jerusalem, you face the problem of not being able to bring her over, and so on. So there is this Israeli view that we can steal the West Bank silently. But of course, there are those crazy fanatics who would like to do that with noise. So we're facing these two Israeli approaches, and honestly, the Palestinians are well aware. The Palestinian masses, the Palestinian society is very well aware of Israel's plans and intentions, and that's why you see protests, demonstrations, resistance acts all over Palestine on a regular basis. If you go to cities like Ramallah, to towns near Ramallah, Bil'in, Na'lin, if you go to Nablus and Jenin, if you go to Hebron, to Yatta, there are protests, there are rallies, there are resistance activities every day. It's just that they don't get the same media attention that the so-called Ukrainian resistance gets. For instance, if the Western media wants to give those labels, they can. To them, somebody blowing himself up in Russian troops in Ukraine is a hero, is a freedom fighter. If a Palestinian does that, you know what they're going to call us. In fact, very recently, I told one Western diplomat this very example. I told him, Your Excellency, you're hypocrites. The double standards that we've seen in the last few months is preposterous. You care so much about freedom of religion and human rights in, for instance, Xinjiang in China, but you arm the same army that is killing innocents in Palestine. If you really care about Muslims, why don't you care about Muslims in Palestine as well? Why don't you care about Muslims in other persecuted societies? It's just that it's power politics, and they use democracy as an upfront to cover for so many of their policies, which is very unfortunate. I don't think that all of the Western societies and human rights groups subscribe to the same hypocrite ideologies, but many in the West do so, especially in the United States. And this has to change. Social media and other platforms has helped us expose these double standards, expose this hypocrisy, and we have to continue. We have to carry on. We have to show them that if apartheid was wrong in South Africa, it is wrong in Palestine. If annexation and occupation is wrong in Eastern Europe, it is very wrong in Palestine. Why do you close an eye when this is done by the Israelis? Why does the United States arm the Israeli military annually with $3.8 billion of military? Why is that okay? Why is that accepted? Israel is annexing the West Bank. It has annexed the Golan Heights. So those who are normalizing with Israel are, I don't know how they justify their policies. They're just participating in the persecution of the Palestinians. Nothing else.
So,
Okay.
but the Muslim, I think another thing we like to know is what can Malaysian do? What is the role that you think we can assist you in any way?
I think Malaysians are doing a lot, and they can do more, of course. Malaysia is one of the leading Muslim countries. It is one of the major OIC member states. It is well respected internationally in the United Nations, in ASEAN, in OIC and other platforms. So your voice actually matters. One of the things that Malaysia can do is become a norm entrepreneur when it comes to the Palestinian issue. Meaning to say, Malaysia can lead the crowds in terms of defining the Palestinian struggle. Now, very recently, the acting foreign minister, Datuk Saifuddin Abdullah, and the current prime minister, the acting prime minister, Ismail Sabri, have started to use terminologies like Israeli apartheid. They are now normalizing the use of these terminologies in international platforms and institutions. This is a very good move. I really hope it continues. And of course, Malaysia, this is not alien to Malaysia. They have been doing this kind of diplomatic advocacy for so many years. I hope this continues. Now, not only the government can do a lot, the people of Malaysia can do a lot. You can speak to the world. Many Malaysians speak the English language. Malaysians, unlike many other nations in the Muslim world, can talk to so many communities. You know, you have a big a community here that speaks Mandarin or Cantonese, so you can speak to many. You have people who speak Tamil here, you can speak to many. You have people who speak Malay, you can also speak to hundreds of millions in the region. The Malaysian people can be the ambassadors of the Palestinian issue. We need this role. We really need this role. So advocacy is one of the roles that Malaysian people can play. Whether they are individuals or institutions, look at the active roles that some Malaysian NGOs are playing in terms of advocating the Palestinian issue. In the last few years, there were regional conferences, ASEAN Plus, Asia Pacific, Asian Convoy, Asian Conference for Palestine. The Parliamentary League organized its international conference in Kuala Lumpur. The KL Summit made the Palestinian issue one of the cornerstones of its discussions and agreements. There is a lot that the Malaysian people, organizations, and institutions can do when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to rallying behind the Palestinian issue, spreading awareness. That's a second thing that you can do a lot. Spread awareness as much as you can. These kind of programs, discussions, dialogues, promotions, videos, posters, rallies, demonstrations, they can really help in spreading awareness. Of course, if we fail to spread awareness, Israel will prey on the ignorant. You remember the news in recent days about Israeli Mossad recruiting some ignorant Muslims, unfortunately, to work their dirty plans. It's because of ignorance. So we have failed in a way, although there is a lot of advocacy in Malaysia, but we have failed in a way to educate the society enough about the dangers of Israel, the risks that come with helping their plans and so on. So spreading of awareness, advocacy, and of course substantial contributions, especially those who are able, the wealthy business people, even the small groups can raise some funds and contribute to humanitarian work in Palestine, because at the end of the day, the Palestinians are sacrificing their life, their properties, their houses, their children. But in order to sustain their struggle, there has to be a lifeline to continue this struggle and to help them. Just like the US sponsors the Israeli state to continue to survive with, for instance, $3.8 billion of military aid a year, in addition to research and development for the Israeli military, in addition to donations for Jerusalem, in addition to contributions of the AIPAC and other Zionist groups in the United States. The Muslim world, the free people of the world, people of Malaysia here can do a lot actually to sustain the Palestinian resistance, to sustain the Palestinian protection of Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Palestinian identity in Palestine until, inshallah, justice prevails and we end this occupation. I see that happening soon, actually, in our lifetime, very soon, inshallah.
Okay, terima kasih, Brother Muslim. That's basically Azam punya soalan. It's basically to conclude that how we Malaysian as individual can help. Macam Brother Muslim cakap dulu, we should keep on doing advocacy. We spread the awareness. We try to educate the people by probably having this kind of program. We do a probably physical talk. And those who have money, probably continue giving them the money that we can afford to give. There's also some discussion in our BDS group about the money that's not went to the to the intended.
I know that there is now news, very unfortunate, about the misuse of the Palestinian Authority of such funds. And I didn't want to talk about this, but when we talk about Israeli apartheid, I personally believe that one of the ways that Israel managed to manipulate the Palestinians was by the fake hope of freedom. In the peace process, the Oslo Accord, they managed to persuade some sections of the Palestinian leadership that you're going to get a Palestinian state if you abandon resistance and if you start talking to us. And the peace process started in the 1990s. We are now 30 years later waiting for a Palestinian state to materialize. The Palestinian Authority was this fake hope. Just like the South Africans were given Bantustans, the South African black people of South Africa were given small districts and small Bantustans in their own homeland, so that the apartheid regime managed to sustain itself and control big African crowds. The same is happening in Palestine through the Palestinian Authority. It's a corrupt byproduct of the Oslo Accord. We're not going to get an independent state through corruption or through the maintenance of the Israeli occupation. It's clean colonialism. We need a Palestinian Authority that resists occupation, that defends the Palestinians, that helps the Palestinians survive, not an authority that is a big failure like the one we have now. This is going to anger many, I believe.
Thank you, Brother Imran. Of course, speaking about a Palestinian issue, there are many issues that we can talk. It's just never ending. Of course, I'm pretty much like talking about the peace process, about the political in Palestine. Now in front of you, you got a potential future prime ministers of Free Palestine, inshallah. It's quite, I know he's spoken about Hamas, he's spoken about Fatah, he's spoken about the politics, how uniting people, that Hamas have now become more like center-right and Fatah is more like center-left, and this kind of thing that we should be, speaking about that. Brother Imran is quite well-versed, inshallah. We try to work together. Probably, inshallah, we'll get one united voice of Palestine. Probably we can help to advocate for speedier like election, like what we're having now all over the world. So you can have one united voice to speak on your behalf. I think that's a starting point that I think Malaysia can play a role in that sense. Together with the Arab world, at least we get one concrete voice to speak on your behalf. So we see from there. There are also plenty of, we will continue, inshallah, we're going to have Brother Imran on so many other issues that I like him to speak about, especially on how we should be able to help the Palestinians to solve this issue. But while still there, we try to do whatever that we can do, and having this education or not. I'll just try to, Azam, you got anything? I just share this one last video on probably from Nelson Mandela, since we are talking about South Africa and what is, take on the Palestinian struggles. Wait, we identify. Wait, sorry. To close up, because we just have to stick to with only 1 hour of this program. We'll have more of Muslim Imran, inshallah. With the TMO. Can you hear it? Because just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right of self-determination. So that is basically from the leaders of the late Nelson Mandela. We also can hear 30 seconds from Desmond Tutu about, the whole struggles there. Wait.
I visited the occupied Palestinian territories and have witnessed the humiliation of Palestinians at Israeli military checkpoints, the inhumanity that won't let ambulances reach the injured, farmers tend their land, or children attend school. This treatment is familiar to me and the many black South Africans who were corralled and harassed by the security forces of the apartheid government. It is not with rancor that we criticize the Israeli government, but with hope. Hope that a better future can be made for both Israelis and Palestinians.
That is basically the late Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. I think the first thing to resolve this issue, just like a Muslim suggested in one of the previous video, is basically to say sorry and apologize to the Palestinian people and let them decide how you want to be solved. It's up to you. It's not like the rapists who dictate what they want to give to the victims of that incident. So I think that is the true justice that need to be done. It need to be done early, because there is one Palestinian that I watched their video. This Afas, it's a young lady of Palestinian. He said basically Palestinians are dead, but their deaths are put on hold. They still resist, inshallah. We pray for their success. We pray for Palestine. With that, thank you very much. We'll see you again for first and third Saturday. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our video. We're going to bring more of Muslim Imran, more from Palestine. And inshallah, probably in the 1st of December, we're going to bring in Israeli spokesperson who's going to speak on our behalf on the apartheid. It's basically his name, Peter Slizak, from Australia. With that, I thank you very much for those who are watching. We'll see you again, inshallah.
Thank you.